user needs and customer experience. So I'm really looking forward to this session, and it's great to have you with us today. Hi, Drew.
Hello, Tessa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. So as I say, we're going to talk about digital accessibility. And I think, first of all, I will just say, anybody has any questions, please post those in the console next to us, and Drew will be more than happy to answer those for you. But I suppose, if it's okay with you, I'll start with the first question, and perhaps we'll run from there. So back in the 2018, I think there were some new digital accessibility regulations, try and get that out in one go, that came into law in the UK in 2018. And could you tell us a little bit about those and how they apply to public sector and universities, please, just so that we've got a good level of understanding before we start?
Sure. It's worse than you think, actually, Tessa. These regulations, as you say, came into effect from a European Union directive, and they were put into UK law in 2018. They're actually called, the full name, and I have to read this out every time, the Public Sector Bodies (brackets) Websites and Mobile Applications number 2, close brackets, Accessibility Regulations 2018, to give them their full title. They were implemented in 3 stages. So from September 2019, anything that was published in the previous year and any platform that had been updated had to have either an accessibility statement or the content had to be made digitally accessible according to certain standards. In September 2020, applied to then all the rest of the websites and platforms. And also video came into scope right in the middle of a pandemic, when universities perhaps were using video more than ever before by a factor of 10. All the videos required either transcripts or closed captions. And in June this year, mobile apps came into scope.
Okay.
So we all must meet those accessibility regulations, and unless doing so places a disproportionate burden, and I don't really want to go into disproportionate burdens at this point, but you can do a disproportionate burden, but you have to have carried one out. You have to be able to produce it, and things like not having given it priority or not having time doesn't really come into it.
Okay.
In terms of what you need to do, and I think I mentioned this already, the platforms or services need to publish an accessibility statement, and those must, for the technical amongst you, the standards are the Web Content Accessibility Standards 2.1 at level AA, and that's quite difficult to do. So you need to publish an accessibility statement saying how you meet those standards or not. And if someone requests it, you also need to produce your content in an accessible format, or alternative format rather.
Okay. And so I suppose in real terms, what does that mean? What did that mean to the university, and how did you have to adapt, and what did you do to make sure that you were following those regulations and guidelines?
We did quite a lot of things, but for the first time, I suppose, things like virtual learning environments, service desks, HR systems came into scope, and of course documents also came into scope. So in the past, people, I think, thought of digital accessibility in terms of their websites. So that increased the scope of all the things that needed to be done. We did an awful lot of things. One of the things we did is we looked at, we assisted some of the technical teams, or the system owners, as we call them here, to provide those accessibility statements by providing a template that met all the requirements of the legislation. And an interesting aside there actually is that developers aren't really taught about digital accessibility. It's not part of computer science courses, and actually, to their credit, here at Glasgow, they then began to train themselves into that as part of their personal development over the last few years. So that's now become part of the thing. We also tried to make sure that these things were, the digital accessibility was embedded in things like procurement and service transition. And of course, in service transition, really, I'm talking about the very early stages rather than the latter stages. It needs to be built on that. As I mentioned, content documents need to be made accessible as well, and that includes things like PDFs, images, and from last year, video had to have a transcript or closed captions. And of course, that presents enormous challenges. So we've did all kinds of things around that as well, and we kind of separated it into content and platforms to make it easier to think about. And we've been trying to work with the content authors in terms of providing them with some support and guidance on how to make their content accessible. And it's actually pretty straightforward. As a matter of fact, web people have been talking about these kind of principles for a lot of years now. So you can imagine how happy they were when all this became law, because then no one was really listening to them before. So I think, and we also must provide an alternate format on request. So one of the things that we did in our virtual learning environment, we use Moodle here, and we procured a tool that is also an accessibility checker, so it helps the content providers there to assess whether their content's accessible or not, and it actually also tells them how to make it more accessible. That tool also provides the content as alternate format, and that was actually a huge benefit, because really we were very worried that we would have to become a little GDPR like when people requesting alternate formats all over the place. So that kind of fixed that problem, if you like. There are lots of little cottage industries springing up trying to figure out how to produce alternative formats.
And the regulations, they came out in 2018, and when do they come into force? When do they actually become, I think, is it this year that is it 1 month this year where you have to actually apply, you have to actually be conforming to those regulations?
No, they're already in force. All of them are in force now as of finished in June 21. Mobile apps came into scope. Last year in September it was video, and it was also remaining websites, and the year before it was just content or websites that had been, or platforms rather, that had been published in the previous year, so since 2018. So the first year it was just anything that had been published since 2018. The second year it was everything else, and this year it is mobile apps, and those regulations are now fully in force.
Perfect. So all our listeners today, hopefully we've gone through a kind of similar experience.
We've all done it, for sure.
They've all done it. Brilliant. They've all ticked the boxes, which is fabulous. Having gone through kind of that experience, and I think it was really interesting to hear you say about, to the developers, actually giving them an opportunity to do some training to understand some new skills, which I think is a real positive about something like this. Having gone through that experience, particularly in the backdrop of COVID-19, what kind of lessons have you learned to kind of take forward to another project or another rollout or something else that you need to do to support some new regulations? Have there been some kind of key lessons learned from you, do you think?
That's a very interesting question. I'll get back to you on that in a couple of weeks, but just off the,
You've only got a couple of minutes, you're fine.
Off the top of my head, I mean, there was a lot of things. I mean, we had buy-in from senior management here right out the gate, and I think that is hugely important. I know other places and other universities where that's not been the case, and they've really struggled with this. The other thing is that there's people who want to do this, and there's people who don't want to do this, and given the bandwidth of how we managed to approach this, working with the people who want to do it has been hugely beneficial, and it has allowed us to take great strides forward, I think. And our accessibility scores are pretty good actually now. Okay.
And how, when you say accessibility scores, how do they manifest themselves? Are you scored internally, externally? Is there a benchmark? Do you have a benchmark against universities, for example?
Yeah, sorry. So the tool that we've bought assesses the accessibility of every piece of content in the VLE, and that gives an average score of accessibility for each course, and then an average score for the entire organisation. And so we can see there, so we were up, on average, we were up 17% in the first year, and thus far, it was only 2019 put it into place. Thus far this year, we're up 10% on that 17%, so we're doing quite well, and people are sort of taking it on board. And actually, when it comes to content, making your content digitally accessible is pretty straightforward.
Okay, fabulous. And looking back over the kind of last 18 months, we've done some lessons learned. What advice would you give to somebody who had to pretend this hadn't happened, pretend this, but we're starting from scratch and this regulation was coming into force in 2022 and you had to start now? What advice would you give somebody who was starting out on that journey? Because those processes, those procedures are really good to take forward into other kind of projects.
Well, I think, I mean, our approach all along, and I think this is how this talk was, this part was presented, was not to try not approach it in terms of meeting these WCAG 2.1 guidelines, but rather the focus has been on improving the user experience, and it turns out that making your content more digitally accessible makes it more usable as well for everyone, not just people with disabilities. So that's been our approach. Of course, that doesn't quite work when it comes to accessibility statements, but the approach to content authors has been that. I mean, we don't even talk about WCAG to them, and we talk about making content better, talk about accessible by design. So I think that's quite a good approach there, and people can understand that. And of course, because you can measure the accessibility score, you can actually, well, we can, you can actually argue that we're improving the student experience as well by doing that, because that is our kind of war cry here, that accessible content is better content. And I think the other thing is the having the management buy-in. I mean, I know I've already said that, but that really is fundamental. To taking any of this forward. It allows you to operate much more out in the open.
Okay, fabulous. And I have a question here from one of our audience members, and they've asked, how do you get a balance between accessibility and usefulness, especially with regards to user guides?
Sure. Well, you got to. I think you've got to look at it like it's a journey, and you're not going to make everything fully accessible all at once. And it becomes, a lot of our work has been about trying to embed good practice in the content creation, so accessible by design. And I think the tool that we've got is pretty good that way, because once you've learned that you should use heading tags in your document, it's quite easy to remember that the next time that you go to make a document. So over time, we're looking for an improvement, and that's what we're actually seeing. We're not 100% accessible, but we're heading in that direction, and we're seeing that improvement. If it was going down, I think I would have further concerns. But I think approaching it as a journey is definitely the best approach, I would say.
Okay, and that I suppose doing things like tagging headlines, that kind of marries up the usefulness, because it makes somebody give somebody access to the content easier, because you've thought about the look and feel and how they're going to consume that, I suppose.
Sure, and it makes it scannable for everyone else.
Yeah.
And using meaningful links is another thing. Well, one of the things that can be quite difficult is the requirement for alternative text on images, and people don't always see the need for that. And I think if you're using a lot of images, I can understand that point of view. But certainly personally, and I don't use images a lot by any means, but it makes me think about my content in a different way if I have to put an alternative text on the image. It makes me think about the rest of it slightly differently. So I have found that useful, although that part of it can be quite onerous. But adding headings is actually easier than what people normally do, which is to bold it and make it a bigger font size. So.
Okay, got some really good detailed top tips here. I like it. I'm sure our audience are loving it. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Well, I think that's we're kind of pretty much out of time. So thank you very much for joining us today, Drew. Thank you for kind of stepping in early when we had some of our technical challenges, and I very much look forward to seeing you at an SDI event hopefully soon in the future. So thank you very much.
Tessa.
Thanks again, Drew.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks
care.
everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So hopefully now we'll have fixed the technical issues that Andrew and Alex were having. So hopefully we'll be able to get those online, and we'll be able to chat to Alex and Andrew about that Runshaw College's VIP programme. So let's see if they are ready to go.
Hi Tessa, I think the Runshaw team are still experiencing connection issues, so we'll have to go straight into the break.
Okay, perfect. That's a good idea. So let's go straight into the break. So it's now 10 to 2. If everybody's happy, we'll reconvene at 2:20 when we have a session on digital transformation in higher education from Tom Monaghan from Halo ITSM. So look forward to hearing about that. And then we'll have our last panel session of the day. And hopefully in between those sessions, we'll be able to hear from Runshaw College too. So we'll come back at 2:20. Thank you very much, and we will see you shortly. Hello everybody and welcome back. My apologies that we weren't able to bring the Runshaw presentation to you. We're going to try and do that at the end of the session at 3 o'clock today. They've been having some issues with the internet. So I know we were due to finish at 3 o'clock today, but we will try and bring you Runshaw at 3 o'clock. If you can't stay for the live session, that's absolutely fine. The session will be recorded and we'll make this available to you after the event. So we're back to the regular programme now, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Tom Monaghan, who is from Halo ITSM. Tom's going to be talking to us about how higher education institutions can move from traditional delivery to digital delivery and be confident with the planning, management and delivery of campus-wide IT services. Hi Tom, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm delighted that A, your audio is working, B, we can see you, and C, it looks like your presentation is raring to go. So that is absolutely fabulous. We'll pop that, if you can pop that on full screen if it is.
Yeah, let's just set that to full screen. Hopefully technology is on my side. Are you able to see PowerPoint? That's the key thing.
I can see PowerPoint, yes. We're slide 1 of 8, which is perfect. So I will pop myself on mute and hand over to you. Thank you very much, Tom. See you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time out today to listen to our very brief talk about digital transformation. As an organisation, I thought first thing probably important to just introduce myself and Halo as an organisation. So Halo is an ITSM software development company. We develop Halo ITSM, our IT service management tool. As an organisation, we've been around since 1994, so seen a lot of change in education, but right across the sort of digital arena. The platform itself is focused on IT out of the box, but it can be used as an ESM tool as well, which we'll probably cover a bit of today. My background, originally I was on the service desk here, so I've seen a lot of change with service and the way things work over the last 10 years of working in this industry. In terms of sort of what I wanted to talk to you about today, I wanted to discuss the traditional approaches, how they're no longer effective. So when we talk about traditional approaches, we're talking about emails, phone calls, how you're managing that perhaps on Excel spreadsheets, maybe a simple ticketing system. And what we want to discuss is that need for a centralized system, not necessarily just for IT, but potentially other departments, HR and facilities, real digital transformation right across the educational organizations. We've seen over the last 18 months a very, very large shift towards things like remote working, the use of platforms like Teams, Teams becoming very central to a lot of organizations, but also a move towards, I guess, IT and other areas of the organization as a service. So people having a single place to go and request whatever it may be, and that routing through to the relevant team. We've also seen big demand on budgets as more and more IT education budget has been pushed into sort of that remote learning. We want to talk about things like automation, so the ability to potentially sort of speed up processes, but also to remove the human element. So when you have things like approval processes, or even things like password resets, how we can do all of that digitally and make that a self-service option. Key thing with Halo, we want to see this as a future-proof solution. So something that is constantly evolving and adapting. Just jumping to the next slide there. For us, we've identified key features that we think are important for any education organisation. So we think that to move forward and transform digitally, the focus needs to be on the self-service portal, but also mobile accessibility, not only for your end users, but also from a faculty staff perspective. So the ability to access this type of software, most softwares, on any device, any browser, as people work from home, from mobile phones, whatever device they're utilizing. The key aspect that we want to push forward with Halo is self-service. As you can see on this sort of screenshot here, we've got the ability for the end users to go in, raise requests, potentially get in touch to sort of raise a new incident. But what we're trying to do with Halo is also build in that automation side of things. So we're integrated into PowerShell script. So if an end user comes to this portal, perhaps there's a new starter, a new member of staff, instead of you going through that manual process of adding them into Azure Active Directory, we're centralizing that. We're building that directly into the platform to speed up that process and keep things moving forward. With our platform as well, you've also got access to things like the knowledge base. So again, self-service, we're centralizing that. We've got artificial intelligence in there, suggesting those articles as we go through the process, and end users trying to access support via the portal. Instead of it raising a ticket in the traditional way, we're routing them through to self-service articles where they can go and hopefully help themselves vote on whether the article was helpful or not, and that then leads us through to sort of top 10 articles, frequently asked questions, with full sort of audit trails in the background, so we're constantly learning and improving our service. Whilst we talk about ITSM, there's much more scope than that within education to transform digitally. Halo, as a platform out of the box, is designed to enable you to build much more of an enterprise service management solution. So in our example here, we're talking about IT, HR, facilities, and depending on who's logging into the portal, you can make different areas available to them. The idea is that what we're trying to do is to build out functionality that will transform current sort of manual processes into electronic digital processes within one centralized portal for your users. The whole platform is designed to be single sign-on, so there's no barriers to use it. It's fully in line with accessibility standards, so there's no hurdles to overcome there. An example here would be perhaps on the facility side, as we have. So they could get in touch, perhaps report broken doors, fire alarm issues. But there's also things like resource booking. So if you need to book a meeting room, you need to perhaps book a minibus. All of these processes and approvals and step-by-steps can be built in and captured within one platform. The idea behind it is that facilities could potentially in the background as well have scheduled maintenance tasks. They could have sort of planned maintenance jobs built into a system. And then you've got visibility and reporting, metrics, KPIs, all within the one tool. The workflows within Halo allow you to go across teams as well. So by moving from just an ITSM into that ESM model, if you have a new starter request, subtasks could be going off to perhaps facilities, maybe they need desks, maybe they need to, car parking spaces, could go over to HR to add them to payroll. But one request from one user creates that entire workflow, that digital transformation of what potentially is lots of emails flying around, maybe even sort of paper-based systems, as we found in some organizations. I think probably it's worth us mentioning a few of the organisations that we do already work with and have gone through this process with. So University of Cambridge, we work with Homerton College. The group there utilising it in IT. More often than not, we do start in IT as an ITSM tool, but that is now utilised in maintenance, as I was describing, potentially utilising the scheduled maintenance elements, warranties, all sorts of different aspects that they're making use of. The key with Halo is that it's out of the box. So what we're discussing, what we're talking about isn't something that you have to rebuild. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's best practice. There's our experience over 25 years of doing this with other organizations and built that into our out of the box platform. We've also got organisations utilising the system, such as York University over in the States, Anglian Ruskin University, Middlesbrough College, another organisation who've just recently embedded Halo in IT, but also in their maintenance and buildings maintenance teams, over 100 agents utilising the platform there. As a system, we are always evolving, so as new tools come into place, other integrations are required. What we've tried to do is take a really proactive approach in terms of integrations. One of the key themes with Halo is that it's about centralizing as many processes as possible, giving you a single pane of glass. So instead of seeing dozens of different tools in lots of different departments that IT then have to manage, have to learn about, support and maintain, you can plug all of these platforms directly into the Halo platform. If you're utilizing things like remote support tools, you're utilizing platforms like Teams, we integrate. With Teams, you've got notifications, you've got booking of meetings. If you've got sessions like today, you could book that through Halo. And that would not only go into the Halo platform, but it also goes into your individual Outlook calendars. So it's all about that centralization. At the end of that process, in the background, Halo is essentially a SQL database. So anything that's captured, you can then report on it. There's proper sort of closed loop feedback built into the tool. So you can get customer surveys built into it. How are the users finding those knowledge base articles? Are they valuable? What's our support like? Where are the bottlenecks if someone requests a new starter? And it's really about identifying areas where you can continually improve the services that you're providing. Out of the box, again, I'll keep saying out of the box, there are dashboards, there are reports, there are metrics, but you can also plug this into third-party tools, things like Power BI and other central reporting systems. Halo, with its out-of-the-box metrics, should enable you to identify trends. We're aligned with the Service Desk Institute's best practice, the reports that are recommended. We do supply a list of those sort of pre-built reports to help you identify potential areas for improvement. In terms of sort of what else we wanted to talk to you about today, I think we've covered sort of the key areas of what we're trying to do as an organisation. I'm hoping that you found sort of this an interesting high-level introduction to our product. I've tried to keep it relatively short, so if there are any questions, if there's anything that people want to discuss today, I'm more than happy to run through those questions now. But I'll say thank you all very much for your time and giving us the space in today's session to talk to you about digital transformation in higher education, and also about the Halo platform and what we hope to bring to organisations like yourselves.
Hi, Tom.
Hi there, Tessa. Sorry, I couldn't see who that was.
Thank you very much for showing that presentation. That was really interesting, because what was great was that obviously Mark earlier from Glasgow Uni was talking about ESM and culture across Glasgow University. So what was good really, I suppose, was to have a little bit of insight into how the tool actually can support, and the technology can support that transition across to ESM. I suppose just a very quick question for me. Just from your experience, really, if an organisation was just about to start out on their kind of ESM journey, what one piece of advice would you give them based on the experiences of the customers you've worked with?
So our advice is really to involve all of the stakeholders very early on in the process. So whilst we normally end up sort of being utilised in IT to start with, that ESM journey is always a sort of the back of our mind. It's in our interest. It's definitely part of our business plan for organisations we work with. So we actively promote that sort of early engagement with all of the different departments across the organisation. It's also important when you're thinking about sort of workflows and that future-proofing of the platform. You don't want to sort of reinvent the system each time another department is plugged into it. So Halo is designed to do that very well out of the box, but having those conversations early on around sort of where approvals might sit, where tasks might sit with other teams, definitely our advice is to try and capture that as early as possible. And that's something that we as an organisation are happy to help people with outside of Halo as a product, just offer our advice and try and assist with that.
Lovely, brilliant, thank you. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Tom. It's lovely to talk to you again, and I hope to see you at an SDI event again very soon. Thank you very much. Fantastic. And take care.
Take care, bye for now.
Bye-bye. So now we have our final panel session of the day, and I'm delighted to be joined again by Kate Carrington. We spoke to Kate earlier this morning, and I'm also delighted to introduce Stuart Walton, who is IT Support Manager from Newman University. Good afternoon both, thank you for joining me today.
Hi Tessa, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, no, great, good to see you too, thank you.
My pleasure. Now, we're going to be having, hi Kate again, we're going to be having a chat, aren't we, about some of the kind of challenges of working in higher education. So I'm going to just do a quick plea now to our audience. You know, this is a great opportunity for them to kind of pick your brains, to ask any questions that they have around some of the challenges that you guys have faced over the last kind of 18, 20 months, and what the plans really are for the future. As I say, we spoke to Kate earlier this morning. I wonder, Stuart, perhaps if you could just give us a little bit of insight into Newman University just before we start, just so that it helps put some of your kind of responses and questions and things into context.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, we're at a university in Birmingham. We're a small university with a Catholic ethos. So we've got like student numbers of about 3,000 and about 500 staff. And our IT team is 15 members of staff, including a support team of 8, and that's the team that I manage. We've just gone through a directorial change, so we've just had a new director join us about a month ago, I was the interim head of the department pretty much throughout the last year, and then returned to my role as being in charge of the people who set things off and on again. So yeah, that's where we are in terms of that. So we've had a return to campus. We operate 2/3 on campus, 1/3 off in terms of lectures. So not fully back like pre-COVID, I suppose.
Okay, fabulous, brilliant. Well, I do have some questions for you both, but perhaps I'll just start with a kind of generic one, I suppose, to kind of kick the ball rolling, if you like. And I suppose this is all around. We did some research at SDI, and we had some of our kind of university community were talking to us really about over the past 18 months, there has been a kind of challenges around the use of self-service dropping because people haven't been sure what to do, tickets increasing, people are returning to campus. Seems to be another kind of bit of a melting pot in terms of organisations kind of coming back and understanding how you provide that level of support. Perhaps you could just give us a bit of an insight as to what that's like for you guys at the minute.
Kate, shall I let you kick off on that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's totally fine. So with us, we are at the moment actively sort of decommissioning email as that contact channel. And it, as you saw before, like from my presentation, we have done, it hasn't just been something that we have been able to do and, you know, a month later we've done it. It's sort of like years in making, from getting, mainly it's that easiest route sort of thing again, because it's making our other channels better. Yeah. So we have actively, one of the first things that we did was remove our email from everywhere, and so those emails that take, you know, significantly longer to do, therefore taking more resource, where people were logging portal tickets because they couldn't find the alternative. So that was kind of like one way that we were able to deal with that. Another way was just complete, like, and actually linked in with that, is prioritizing the workload. So we had to deprioritize email. There was no way that we could have got through all of that workload with the resource that we had at the time. And then it was about getting in touch with all of our stakeholders to say that, you know, making sure that every time you emailed the service desk, it said, look, we will get back to you at some point. It might be 15 working days, but if you ring us, you'll get through in like 5 minutes. So that was a big piece of work for us, that sort of like prioritization.
Okay, thanks, Kate. What about you, Stuart?
Yeah, in terms of that, I mean, we're quite early in our journey with a service management tool. We have introduced Top Desk just at the end of June. Which has been really good for us. So, you know, we're really trying to push the self-service portal as much as we can. We realise that that's something that we have to keep reviewing, and the kind of comment, you know, kind of calls that we get in, we can look at and say, right, you know, are we getting something that we can actually make a knowledge item for on the self-service portal and push people towards that, you know, or creating forms that structure the responses that people give us, rather than having that back and forth of email. So I think long term we probably want to go down the route of you know, removing email as a way of communicating, but we appreciate that it's quite early to just turn that off completely. So we're trying to show the benefits really of going through the portal and really push that at the moment. So that's the way we're going with that one.
Okay, thank you. And we talked a bit about with Hannah earlier, just about kind of the emotional connection, and actually people value an emotional connection more than they do the customer service itself, because people actually connect to that. And when you're looking at, I suppose, self-service and getting people to buy in and adopt to that, how do you create that emotional connection with that self-service, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned about the emotional connection. When one of the things we did, like in response to the COVID pandemics, we did a lot of Zoom support for people.
Okay.
And so we were solving calls that we would have done face-to-face but over Zoom, which is fine. But also, you know, induction of new staff members, not just in IT, but actually throughout the institution. We would give them that personalised service. We would say, right, your first day, you're going to have a call with you know, Raj in our team, and he's going to give you a fantastic professional service, give you all the technology you need, sort out all your login, your email, all of this. And that allowed us to carry on the community spirit, which is really important at Newman. And so yeah, I think, as Hannah alluded to in her presentation about that emotional connection mattering, that's very much the case. And in terms of the resources that we make, in our self-service portal, it's very much that corporate identity, making sure that people recognise it as being part of like Newman systems already, rather than something that external, they don't really recognise it and it looks a bit kind of clinical or something. It's very much still feels like a Newman thing, and so yeah, people feel that connection to it.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And I know, Kate, when you did your presentation earlier, you were talking about the team expanding. I think you were looking at an expansion of the team. Have you got a different approach now to, we've just talked about induction, so if we go back a stage, and what's your kind of approach to recruitment going to look like now?
So in general, the way that we recruit and sort of have done while I've been in this role is it's quite intense. It's a 3-part, most of the day type of interview, and although we're aware that it's sort of like a long process, it gives us the best people, and it also gives us a really good day. It's made up of 3 parts. We have like a role play, we have a team activity, which is just so fun, and like an interview after that. And we didn't want to lose that, so we basically work with our technical teams to make sure that we could then do that over Teams. The role play actually worked out easier, so that was just easy to do over Teams. The team activity was a bit more difficult, but again that's such a big part of our team, that team spirit, that we needed to keep that part in as well. So we managed to do that within Teams, and just slightly tweak it. So yeah, that's kind of what we do, and then we focus on customer service. I know that someone spoke about that earlier, but we always focus on customer service because, yeah, you can teach the technical skills, but if they don't understand the customers and don't want, aren't passionate, and that's not the centre of what they do, then that's not in line with what the team are. So yeah, we're always recruiting for customer service.
Okay, fabulous. And a question here from one of our audience, and I think I'll ask you both the question because you might have slightly different answers, if I may. So the question is, our biggest challenge is getting users to read the information we send them, or is that just us? Doesn't matter what channel we try or how we send them information, 90% of users ignore it, and then they get hit by a problem, and the service desk tell them to read the docs we sent out. Does that sound familiar to either of you? And what do you do about it, I suppose?
Yeah, I don't know really what you do. I mean, it's very familiar. I think it's about putting the information in as many places as possible, I suppose, and not just relying on, we sent it once, so why didn't you read it? But using multiple channels. So we have multiple channels of internal communication here at Newman, including digital signage around campus. So important announcements about stuff would go on there, along with through email, and we've got an internal bulletin. We can post it as a broad service announcement on our portal. So we're really trying to do that. I think also trying to put, where possible, relevant information at the point where they're going to encounter the problem. Okay. So one of the biggest issues we had actually when I first joined the university 6 years ago was there's a non-standard way of turning projectors on in classrooms, because obviously buildings get built in stages and then you put the technology in that's relevant at the time. So you've got lots and lots of different kinds of ways of turning projectors on, and lecturers would be like, how do I turn the projector on? And you don't want to make them feel foolish and just say press the on button. So you put signs up by the actual device. So even though you might have emailed people to say, you will be able to find signs in classrooms, if you put it in the most logical place they're going to look, then hopefully that's going to get them to read just that very specific bit, which is press this particular button or whatever it happens to be. So it is a challenge, but I think we're constantly trying to think of new ways of getting the message out there.
Okay. Anything to add, Kate, at all?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with everything Stuart said. It's definitely something that we encounter at Manchester Met. One sort of, I guess we have layers of how much we want to, I guess, how much we want to put into the message getting out. So these aren't official sort of levels, but for example, now when we are turning email off, I'm really concerned that people aren't going to have read anything. And so we are going round team meetings of different teams around the university and doing a presentation. So I've made like a 4-slide presentation, and we're just going to have a chat with people and get those questions that way, which is quite long-winded, but then necessary for the work that we're doing. So again, yeah, it's as many places as possible that you can reach as far and wide across the university, I'd say.
On that as well, when you're saying about going to team meetings, one thing we're looking to develop is a digital ambassadors initiative. So recruiting people from around every department who are like early adopters, and so they get to try something new, and then they will evangelise about it to their team, as long as it's good, obviously. Yeah, that kind of, so word of mouth being the most powerful form of advertising, I think, really is that we can send as many emails out as we want, but I think getting people to actually spread that message as well is going to be really helpful.
No, absolutely. And I think both universities are kind of moving towards kind of hybrid working, aren't you? So some services and lectures online, some back at campus. So that's a different dynamic. So 2 years ago it was slightly different. We've had another dynamic, and now we're moving to the next phase. How are you kind of managing those kind of stakeholder expectations, again, from what we've had in the last 18 months? What does that look like for both of you?
Should I go first on this
Go
one?
for it, yeah.
So for us, it is about making, I guess, from going to those like meetings where there's the sort of like most people, and explaining exactly what the plan is and where, like, how that affects them. So there's, at the moment at MMU, we are pretty much 100% back on campus, and I know that's above the average of most universities across the UK, and that is, it's a really good thing, and actually lecturers and students really appreciate it, and we do have the capability to go back to online teaching at any point. So it's about us being ready and knowing, and lecturers knowing that there's the other options as well. So they've been, really heavily engaged with timetabling and having those backups and options and things like that, and engagement with lecture capture and things like that this year were just so much more ramped up, because we needed all lecturers to kind of know exactly what we were doing, and I think those initial decisions to bring everyone back on campus really did involve everybody as well, because the types of things that we do at MMU, it does really benefit from that on campus. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think the main thing is just making sure that communication is really, really soaked up by all lecturers, and that they fully understand and are confident with what's going on, and that IT are as well. And we know, the service desk are fully aware if we have to, switch straight back to online teaching, we've got our processes, and we know that we have to follow them to help support everybody else. Thanks, Kate. What about you, Stuart?
Yeah, I mean, Kate's saying there about communication, I think that's the key thing. I mean, in terms of our managing of expectations, it's through using our portal, people can track the progress of their calls. So they can see the target date and when it's being worked on, and indeed who's working on it. So I think in the past, we have relied on just email and people just emailing us, and then you kind of feel like, well, did they get it? Is it, it's a bit lost in a black hole? Is anybody actually working on this? And then you end up sending a follow-up email and so on. Whereas having that transparency with the target date, I think is really important. Obviously, we reinforce that tasks that are of sort of critical importance to the operation of the university, in other words, learning and teaching, they're going to get priority over things that are nice to have. But that's fine. That's how it's always been. There are emergency phones in every classroom, so that you can just get straight through to IT service desk and get somebody to go. Luckily, we're a small campus, so there's nowhere that's more than 5 minutes away. So I think that's the way we've gone about it. Really, is by introducing that portal. That's actually made our communication a lot more transparent.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And obviously we've talked a lot about comms, and you guys have talked about kind of switching email off and things. A question here we have is, how much do you rely on social media to get messages out? Do you want to take that one first, Stuart?
I can, because it'll be a quick answer, and it's we don't. So yeah, we haven't gone down that route yet. I did think about it some time ago, because obviously, like, if email goes down, you can't email everybody to say email is down, and we didn't at the time have a way of communicating that in any other fashion. And so I did think we would maybe set up like a little Twitter account that people could check. But then I realised the timeline would just look like email is down, and then the next time we tweeted it would be email is broken, and it would just look like a timeline of faults, when in fact we were probably doing a lot more. So in an absolute emergency, we can communicate through Newman social media channels, but we don't tend to.
Okay. What about you, Kate? Is that similar, or do you use social to get messages out at all?
So we do. We have, there's all the university sort of social media, but we have our own Twitter. It's like an MMUIT Twitter, and it's sort of someone from my team, senior analyst, has sort of like taken that on, and so it doesn't look like sort of a feed of bad news, which we're also really aware of. And he's actually amazing at like putting really fun things in there as well, and making it engaging, and it is really useful. Its target audience, we would say, is primarily students that follow that, but we do have staff members that follow us on Twitter as well. So when we send out those comms, when we're having incidents, we do always put a tweet up there if that's appropriate as well. We don't take tickets or resolve issues or anything via Twitter. I noticed that was something that Hannah said earlier, that people value with social media. That was quite high up for me. So yeah, it's interesting, made me think about whether that's something that is worth branching out into. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's where we are with it at the minute.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, both. I think this question I'll aim at Stuart, if I may. So you have lots of stakeholders at university to engage with, obviously. I suppose, how do your team engage students to provide feedback on the services that you're developing for students? That'd be really interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned about our Digital Ambassadors initiative. We're looking to include students in that, and obviously representation from undergraduates and masters and postgraduate students as well. So we're very hopeful that that's going to help further develop our student engagement. But we've done regular satisfaction surveys, so not just relying on an NSS, but we actually do our own satisfaction surveys about IT's performance, or if we've introduced a new system, is this system working for you? And part of that, usually the first question is, do you even know about it? And worryingly, the answers might be quite high on the no front, but that means we've got to improve our communication, to students about these features. So yeah, I think through Microsoft Forms we've been using for some years, that's enabled us to gauge the opinion towards certain things. Lecture capture has been one, for example. It's been a thorny issue pre-COVID, and we were able to gauge interest in that, and we could then go to our academic colleagues and say, look, there's a real appetite for lecture capture here, and we can work with you to help you with this, and so that's been really helpful. So it enables us to then do a sort of you said we did kind of thing, so that kind of communication I think is good as well. But that's been the main method, really, as I say, is that satisfaction survey. But hopefully with the digital ambassadors we can have another another route in. We also have a presence on a number of committees, including the Student Experience Committee, which has student representation on there, so we can have a direct conversation with them right there as well.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So I think I have kind of two final questions for both of you. This session was around the challenges of working in higher education. So my first question is, what are you most proudest of over the last 18 months? What's your most proudest achievement, I think, over the last 18 months? And then what are you looking forward to most about the next 18 months? Kate, do you want to take that one first?
Yes, okay, let me just have a quick think.
Take as long as you need on that, Kate.
So I think that the thing that I am the proudest of is the way that the team has worked with the university over the past 18 months, and that is learning more about what the university needs through their contacts with us, and then relaying that back so that we're able to make those changes, because we wouldn't have the understanding of the needs of the university without the team, and they were so open and, you know, really engaged with what they were listening to and their struggles, and we received so much amazing feedback throughout that time, and for a team that, you know, it was the service desk, you know, it was really hard. It was a really hard time, but their character really showed throughout that time, and that is something that I am really proud of. And I think that the relationship between the service desk and the university and lots of different teams within the university is so much better now, and is so much wider, and so many more teams that we know about, that the understanding that we have as well. And Teams has been amazing for that. You know, that sort of like swarming work that has just happened because of COVID, that was very cool. So yeah, I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. The thing I'm looking forward to is, well, seeing switching email off. So that's only in the next couple of months, but really seeing the benefit of that and how that plays out, I think is going to be really interesting. The improvement, the continuous improvement of our knowledge base is something that, to get it to a point where we can potentially look at chatbots, is something that I'm also really excited about and interested in, and that sort of figuring out what the university wants from a chatbot and how we can make that work so that it's a good one. And the team are really excited to do the technical work on that as well, like it's a little service desk project. So yeah, really looking forward to that, and to have the whole team in on the same day would be really nice, but that's just mainly looking forward to everyone feeling safe, really.
Fabulous, lovely. Thank you very much, Kate. And Stuart, what about you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, a number of the things Kate said there are things that I would say I was, you know, really pleased and proud of in terms of our team. You know, certainly like the level of support people have given each other has been fantastic. And I think, yeah, I think the sort of, I mean, we've used Zoom rather than Teams, although we're hopeful of moving towards Teams in the future. But you know, that ability to have sort of an instant meeting with somebody has actually made it easier to understand what other departments do, and having that greater understanding of that has then enabled us to have a more proactive attitude towards supporting them. And so, you know, hitherto we've had a bit of an attitude of, if you tell us what you want, we'll see what we can do. And I think what we want to try and do is have the attitude of, we've seen this really cool thing, do you want to do it? So I think, you know, there needs to be that sort of that move towards that level of partnership. So yeah, and I think one thing we were really praised about quite a lot by a number of people was how quickly we got people working from home. You know, once the pandemic hit in March last year, within about a week or two, everyone was able to work remotely, and that was, you know, a really fantastic achievement. For obviously we're a very small team, and so we just went, we're not focused on anything else, we're just making this happen. And that was great that we could just, you know, really prioritise and focus on that. So that was really cool. In terms of what I'm looking forward to, I think I'm looking forward to how we can develop and improve, our service provision. In the future, how we can keep working, with people, how we can engage staff and students through the digital ambassadors. I think that's going to be really cool, because I think it's going to improve that relationship from being, as I say, a reactive service to being able to work in partnership with people. I think that's going to be really exciting for everyone in the team.
Brilliant, lovely, thank you. Well, that was a really nice way to end our chat today. So thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, Stuart and Kate. It's been lovely to see you. As I say, hopefully we look forward to seeing you at an SDI event soon in the future. So once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so thank you very much for sticking with us. And now we are joined hopefully by Alex and Andrew from Runshaw College, who are going to talk to us about their VIP programme. Looks like they are ready to go. We can see your screen. Let's see if we can hear you.
Hoping you can hear me, Tessa. Fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. Perfect, I can. So welcome. Thanks very much for fixing your IT issues to be with us today. I will put myself on mute and we will leave you to it. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Really sorry for the delay today. We've had any number of IT problems, and it's one of them, isn't it? Because we're IT, it's always a little bit embarrassing. Alex has actually had to go into another meeting, so I don't know. I'll just impersonate him for the first few slides or something. But no, really appreciate you. Really appreciate you sticking with us. So before I talk about the VIP programme, just a little bit of background on us as a college. So we're a further education college. With us previously had a small HE offering. At the moment we don't. We're now pushing more adult side. But the 16 to 19 side is the real bread and butter of the business. We've got about 5,500 students, probably about 600 staff. As an IT services department, we're a department of 14. That's 4 of us on the service desk, 5 IT infrastructure, and 4 IT systems. And I'm proud to say we're the first, and I think still only, college to achieve the STI certification, and we're currently at 4 stars. So that's really cool. So onto the VIP. So VIP for us, it's not so much person, it's process really. We've got an in-house systems team, which is like a development team. We are very agile in terms of the way that we develop, the way that we release software, also the way we design our processes as well. The Agile Manifesto do value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We understand that our people, our customers, our stakeholders are what's important, but what makes them important is not their rank, if you will, but it's the processes that they're involved in. So the college's mission, so we believe education changes lives, so we put teaching and learning and the needs of our students first. So that kind of ethos of the college just filters down to the main processes, all from teaching and learning, what comes after the teaching and learning, and also what comes before it. So it all kind of feeds into each other. And of course, on top of that is payroll, because if no one got paid, no one would be able to afford to work here. We couldn't run the college. So how do we know what a VIP is? So we have a customer experience program within which our VIP program sits. And the strategy is really simple, and it's just about knowing our customers, whether they're staff, students, parents, contractors, visitors. You know, we get to know them really well, and within that we do carry out quite a number of activities really. A lot of it comes with experience, but we carry out those activities so we can all kind of get to know the customers, the different needs and requirements, the different urgencies, priorities. So we carry out customer profiling, we carry out some journey mapping. So this particular one is for every ticket, and we have more specific journeys. We're actually going to be looking to expand those quite soon to start the journey a little bit earlier, and also kind of probably add emotions into that as well at the different points of the journey. So it's not just about knowing our customers, of course, we have to know our business as well. So we do carry out, again, a number of BRM activities. We have business relationship management program. One of the key ones here that we've just put the arrow is, as a service desk, we will offer invites. We'll go to meet different departmental managers, heads of schools, not necessarily management though. There might be some certain members of staff that are really kind of have specific requirements. For example, one of the members of staff who kind of does all the technology for supporting the students with perhaps the learning difficulties. She has some specific requirements, so we met with her. So yeah, that's a key thing. But we do drop-in sessions, stakeholder engagement. We do quite a lot of stuff really to make sure we have that insight so we can fully support the business. So this is all of this is underpinned by our strategic alignment activities. So this particular graphic, we have a graphic for pretty much every program page, every one of our processes. We're starting to use it in terms of like internal marketing and that sort of thing to raise awareness across the college. But this, so we kind of understand how the different processes and the different programs align to the business strategy. So you can see here our customer experience program aligns to the quality, people and innovation elements of the organizational strategy. On the customer experience program document itself, it kind of goes into greater depth about which parts specifically align. So our actual VIP program. So it is largely process based, as I mentioned. It's very agile, it's very fluid. Different processes become VIPs at different times of the year. So payroll, if it's toward the end of the month, that is a VIP ticket, then that's a VIP. If it's towards the beginning of the month, then it would be more prioritized along with other tickets. August time, enrollments, preparations for start of the academic year, that's absolutely the most important activities going on. Anytime when there's an exam going on, they're a VIP. If something goes wrong, we jump on that ticket. So does this mean that senior managers or directors, however they're known in the different organizations, does this mean that they're not VIPs? Well, again, we're really agile, we're really fluid. It depends on the nature of the contact. If it's just a standard P3 or P4 request or incident, it's prioritized like all other tickets based on the urgency and the impact of the business. However, it could be an issue that is going to have a big impact on the business. So something related to an Ofsted inspection, for example, or a governor meeting that was going to take place regarding college funding. So even though it's just one person, it could still have a major business impact. But just because they're a senior manager does not necessarily mean it's high priority. I promise I just didn't quickly draft this slide together when the previous speaker was mentioning buy-in. It is so important. Our SMT really buy in to the way we manage our VIP program. They understand that giving a false level of urgency could negatively impact their business. It could cause a delay in something like a higher priority ticket getting resolved. That higher priority ticket may end up stopping them from working anyway and just a load of other people. So what we would say is, when you're defining your VIP program, really consult the business as to what's important to them. You can let them know, obviously give them the insight how you manage things, how we manage things, how different things can affect other systems that they might not quite have that understanding of, but ultimately consult with them. So this, yeah, the SMT buy-in, so that really should feed into your SLM process. Document it on the SLA. If after everything, all the discussions, if they then say any senior manager issue, no matter whether we deem it high priority or not, is a high priority, then get it put into your service level agreement, and that's what you go with, and obviously make the best of it, support the business as best as possible. So we also feed it into the very start of our journey. As part of our interview process, we have a load of questions that we ask potential employees, one of which is a scenario we give them, and it's a long time since I wrote it, but I think the scenario is you've got a classroom with a lot of students who can't access the internet, they need it for learning, and you've got a senior manager with an issue, but they can work around, you know, how do you deal with it? So it really does kind of feed in right from the start of an employee's journey with us. And that pretty much covers everything with our VIP program. I think it's probably the first time we've managed to not go over the time for an STI presentation. Again, really want to thank you for your patience and kind of sticking with us with all the technical problems. I'll probably just tell myself it was like a boxing card and we were the main event or something. I don't know. But no, thank you. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you giving us the time to talk at a HE event, even though we're FE. And I don't know how the time is. I guess if there's any questions, that's fine. Happy to field them. If not, I'm just happy to go back to being muted again, as we were without even trying earlier on.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you for sticking with it. Delighted that you could share that presentation with us. That was great. And then you did it so